Chris said, I'm going to talk a little bit more about me in a second, but today we're going to be talking about threat hunting. Part of why this talk came to be is because I was going to a lot of conferences and all the threat hunting talks were like super high level, showing code, very narrow in scope. So what I did was try to take a step back and kind of bring my philosophy of how we get to do some threat hunting. This is an advanced for some people who are maybe newer to security, and so a lot of misconceptions. So I'm going to try to clear some of those up here today. To start to do that and kind of frame the conversation, I want to use this number, 62%. And the importance of this number is as follows. I apologize, it looks a little bit, but I think we can make what it says. There was a survey by crowd research partners a couple of years ago where they asked, which of the following do you consider to be the top challenge that your security team is facing? Surprisingly enough, this was the answer. 62% said it's the detection of advanced threats, the hidden, unknown, and the emerging stuff. So basically the stuff that we cannot readily see out there on our networks and systems. What we're going to do here today is show you how you can carve a path from a reactive security defensive operation to a more proactive one. Go find those bad things before they find you. We're going to talk about how threat hunting is different from forensics and incident response. What is it that we need to do threat hunting? How we are going to do this? A lot of people ask this. What do I look for? I don't know what I'm doing. How do I start? What tools do we use? Right? Tools are always going to be important. Who is the hunter? Who is the person who's going to be doing all this good stuff? Okay. And more important, what is it that you can do right now or Monday when you go back to the office to start having these discussions with your leaders and whatnot, and your engineers and technicians and analysts and all of that, to start doing this in the office. So let's go ahead and dig right into the topic. Who is this guy? Like Chris said, I've been working in the banking industry in the US, in Chicago. Been doing IT for 20 years. I started breaking things, and I have to put, does anybody know what that computer is? Thank you, Commodore 64. So that, I always put it up there because that is what started this IT passion for me. I went to a store, saw it on a display, and fell in love with it when I was, I don't know, 13, 14. So that's what started everything. So these days, again, like Chris said, I run a blue team in the banking sector. We do incident response, forensics, insider threat, and everything else that nobody else wants to do. So that's a lot of stuff. All right. Lawyers make me say it. Opinions are my own. They do not reflect the views of my employer. So with that out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. So what is it that we've been doing when we have some issues with security incidents and problems and whatnot? It's the same thing. A lot of people do the same thing over and over and over. We employ, to some extent, the concept of the Security Operations Center. We see there in the picture. If you are a big company and you have a lot of money, you have something like what we see up there in the picture. Sadly, not everybody has that. So to some extent, you have something. Maybe you subcontract that to one security provider out there, but it's kind of the same concept. The problem with the approach is that it's very rule heavy. We are looking for things mostly based on signatures. We've been doing that forever. Antivirus, your SIEMs have defined rules and things like that. And yeah, it works. I mean, we leverage the usual suspects, IPS, firewalls, your endpoint. You throw all that in your SIEM and you come up with some magic and detections and whatnot. The problem with the approach, it's highly reactive, okay? Begs the question, what about the unknown? What if we don't have a signature for something? There's something new out there. There's something that we just don't know how to detect because the vendor has not pushed any kind of signature. So how are we going to solve that problem? We are highly reactive, okay? Again, that's kind of a big problem for a lot of people out there. We want to think that we are, cyber warriors. We put our armor on, and we are ready to go and fight evil in our networks. We want to tackle all the alerts that we see, which for some environments that's a lot, lead to fatigue and whatnot. But we follow what NIST says: contain, eradicate, recover, do the lessons learned, rinse, wash, and repeat. We start doing the same thing all over again. But still, we are just doing this based on the things that we know. We cannot attack the stuff that we don't know. It's a problem. We become then stuck in a loop. Like I said, rinse, wash, repeat. We're doing the same thing over and over and over, right? The bad guys there, they are looking for the new and the good stuff to keep attacking us. So we're falling behind. That's just no doubt, okay? We're so busy. We just don't have the time to start doing other things and kind of start thinking outside of the box, how we can improve processes and things like that. We fall into what's called the capability trap. We do what we know how to do. Look at the seam, look at the logs, match it against something. If it doesn't match, it's all good. Nothing is happening. The problem is that at some point, we're going to have low confidence in those alerts because, again, it's new stuff. There's some gaps in there somewhere. We just don't know what they are because we're not taking a deep look at all the stuff going on. And those gaps usually manifest themselves in the shape of something that's missing. Sure, we see a network alert, but how do we translate that to something in Active Directory or some other thing? How about our applications? We lack some visibility, some logs. As a result, we cannot make intelligent decisions about those things that we're seeing. Like I mentioned, the process is just not improving. It stays the same. Security operations are not maturing at all. We are staying just the way they are. And yeah, like I said, the guys are just advancing at crazy, crazy pace. That begs the question then, what do we do? What are we going to do now? Obviously, we need something new because whatever we're doing could be better, okay? There's no need to reinvent the wheel. We're going to see how you work with what you have right now in your environments. Some people think advancing security means getting a blank check and buying a whole bunch of tools and things and hiring a bunch of people. Sure, that works if you're in the news because you got breached and they give you the blank check, but hopefully that's not you. The way that we're going to solve this is by moving towards a more proactive approach, okay? Remember, we want to go looking for trouble before it finds us. And I use this quote from Scott Roberts. If you know SANS, he's one of their instructors. He says that reactive organizations, which are the ones that we just described, they kick off an incident in 3 ways. The first one is when some sort of alert comes in, intrusion detection, some other seam hit, something like that. You get a call, and again, this is tailored for the US. If the FBI or some other element of law calls you saying, hey, did you know that we are seeing some activity in your systems that are publicly facing doing X or Y or Z? Or the third way is if you follow Brian Krebs, security journalist or somebody like that calls you, hey, could you give us a comment for a story that we're working on why your customer database is exposed publicly on the web and we can see all their information, right? Again, you are reacting to something. You're not looking for trouble before it finds you. And here's where threat hunting is going to enter, right? We do not need a bow and arrow. We're going to see how we're going to tackle this problem by doing some things that may seem like common sense, but maybe we just don't see them again because we're just too busy and whatnot. Scott then moves on to say that when organizations change from reactive to proactive by using threat hunting, the team, the incident response team, is going to go and look for that activity, okay? Again, look for trouble before trouble finds us. And it's going to be based on a number of things. It could be patterns of activity, some threat intelligence, and I cannot emphasize this enough, just a hunch. we can do threat hunting just on something that we believe might be happening. We're going to see an example of that in a minute. Okay. Once that happens, the hunting team does their thing. Then the result of that, it's going to be fed up to incident response. It gets codified into some sort of automatic detection, and it becomes business as usual. And you move on to the next hunt. More to come on that process also in a second. Before we say what threat hunting is, I always like to start by saying what it's not, because I've heard all kinds of stories out there. And I always like to debunk them. So it's not magic or a unicorn. Some people say, oh, okay, I have a problem. I need to mature my operations. I'm going to do the threat hunting, and I'm going to be the elite at what I do, at detection and response and all of that. Well, you could get there, sure, but you need to mature in the threat hunting space. It's not like you one day say, oh, let's hunt and go and do it. Fortunately, it doesn't work like that. It's not a set it and forget it thing. This is a living process, okay? You do it, you iterate, you enhance your defenses, you collect more data, you analyze it, and it's gonna take some time. It's a living process. It's not something you can just forget about. It's not what some vendors say it is. And I kid you not, some vendors are going to tell you 100% automated threat hunting. No such thing. Okay? We're going to see how threat hunting always involves somebody, a human, an analyst, making decisions. Okay? Now, there's a lot of fine vendors that like the ones that we have here on site, they are going to tell you where they fit into a threat hunting process. Those are the guys that you want to talk to, not the guy that's going to tell you that they have the definitive answer to threat hunting. Okay? Buzzword, that's the other thing that I hear people say, oh, that is like next generation this or next generation that, or that is a buzzword. It's not. Like I said, vendors are talking about this. There's a lot of things that can be proven how this improves security operations. So certainly not a buzzword. With that, begs the question again, what is this threat hunting thing? If anybody knows David Bianco, he's been doing threat hunting work for years. He works now for Target, the stores out there in the US. He defines it the following way. It's the collective name of techniques to discover malicious activity that the automated systems missed, again, because it's new, there's no signature or anything, and the hunt will always involve a human. If it's fully automated, it's not hunting. Thank enough that we're not in a state where the computers can make decisions for us, because we would be out of jobs. We still need those engineers, analysts, and people looking at those logs to kind of fill the gaps, make the connections, and decide how to move on. Why do we do the hunting? Well, we need to cover those gaps that we said a few slides ago, right? We want to identify that undetected compromise with the purpose of fitting it back to the incident response team. Remember that the people who are going to be doing the hunting in a mature organization, they're not going to go, patch or grab forensic images or things like that. Your threat hunters are going through threat hunt. They need to pass the results to your incident response people, okay? Automating detection becomes a job after threat hunting, okay? So when we say cannot be fully automated, that doesn't mean automation does not play an important role, because it does, okay? At the end of the day, you want to reduce your attack surface and respond faster to your incidents. So that's basically what we're trying to achieve here. To do that, we kind of need to rewire the way that we're thinking. A lot of places are going to be stuck again in that loop, but you need to take a pause and say, you know what? What are we going to do different? Let's get those gears turning, generating ideas, discussing, kind of selling the threat hunting concept. We're also going to see how to do that in a minute. And we need to adapt to what the bad guys are doing. We're just behind as defenders. There's no point in trying to obscure that fact. There's the bad guys, they gotta get it right one time. We have to get it right all the time. So we have to be adapting to what they're doing. We need to reduce that investigation time. If anybody saw the talk by CrowdStrike, they talk about this. We need to do this in a faster manner. We need to identify incidents quicker. We need to be able to respond to them quicker. And that is part of how we're going to solve that problem by doing things like thinking in a proactive manner. I like to explain threat hunting, and I forget the gentleman's name that spoke right here before me from Cyberbit. He was talking about people, process, and technology. That is, in my opinion, what everything comes down to in the security space, okay? Because those three things need to work together. Otherwise, we're not going to achieve anything, right? I see it, I say tripod because imagine if you have a camera and you put it right here, you need those three legs of the tripod to be at the same distance, height. Uh, if you have one shorter than the other, the whole thing is just going to fall down. It's not going to work. You're going to lose your expensive camera. So they need to work in unison, together, pulling in the same direction. They are all equally important. Let's take a look at each one of those. The process. This is one space where I get a lot of questions. A lot of people say, I don't know, this is threat hunting, sure, how do I do it? Is it IOCs? Is it this? Is it that? See a little bit how we're going to attack that part. Maturity model. Like I said, your companies are each one, I'm pretty sure, in some different state. We may have here people who just building a security team. You may be working for a big company that has a whole bunch of people and you have a threat hunting team. You're looking how to improve. As you can see here in the maturity model, you may start at level 0 all the way on the left. You rely on a lot of automated alerts because that's all you have. You just have maybe intrusion detection prevention and antivirus and a couple of things. Maybe you're not collecting a lot of data. Remember that one of the key things for threat hunting is going to be collecting a lot of logs, doing some analysis, and coming to some conclusions based on that. As you move through the maturity levels, you may take, I don't know, a month, 6 months, a year, a couple of years. No right or wrong answer here. The idea is that you're always going to be shifting right until you go all the way to level 4, which means that you have a lot of automation, okay? You're collecting a lot of data about everything. And when I say collecting data, I mean useful data. That doesn't mean you collect every log about every single thing, because I don't know anybody who has an unlimited budget. And by the time you throw all of that into your SIEM platforms, you're paying for ingesting all that data most likely, and it gets expensive really, really quick. So you want to make targeted collections of data that is valuable from an incident response perspective. And again, it's going to take you some time to kind of understand what is it that you need to collect in detail. But the key is that you enter the maturity model at some stage and you're going to progress at X pace. You cannot say, oh, I'm going to be there next month. I'm going to be there in 2 months. It may take some time, realize that. But the key is that you grow. You don't start with a perfect hunting operation right off the bat. Okay? The other big question I always get, I don't understand, how do I look for the things that I don't know? That it's understandable. Sounds kind of counterintuitive. It's like, go find something and I'm not going to tell you what it is. Yeah, that could be a problem. But we have a 4-step process here that, as the definition that we're using for threat hunting said, we can base it on threat intelligence. It could be just a hunch or some pattern of activity, something that you know, for example, that the bad guys are doing. If you know that you read an article and you see that some bad actor is using X technique to move laterally, well, you can feed that in here and you can say, okay, I'm going to create a hypothesis. I saw that APT27 is using this technique to move laterally. Okay, that's good. Build it into the process. You don't know right off the bat if that's in your systems because you don't have a rule for that specific thing. You're going to go ahead and create a hypothesis. I think there's somebody in my systems doing this in this manner, okay? You're going to go ahead and move to the second step, which is the investigation. And this is going to be a learning experience because you're going to realize a few things. Most likely that you don't have all the logs that you need. So that's your first lesson learned. You're going to learn what data you need to capture to analyze those logs. Okay, that can lead to a whole bunch of other questions. How do we centralize the data? But again, big learning experience. But let's assume for a second that you do have the logs. Okay, you go ahead and analyze them. Okay, you go ahead and then uncover new patterns and tactics, techniques, and procedures. With the data that you capture, you should be able to answer some questions that you may have about the activity. Like I said, this could be based on something that you saw on the news or something like that. And that is what you would do in that step. From there, you move to the analytics step. You have to enrich your data. Just looking at one log is just not going to cut it. You need to add more information, statistics, data stacking, outliers, all kinds of ways to just sift through all that information that you're getting and being able to make it into something actionable. Ideally, what's going to happen at the end of that, you're going to have completed the cycle of your hunt. And that could be codified into some sort of detection that can be automated. Okay? Taking another step back, if you don't have threat intelligence or you just don't have anything, you can say, oh, okay, my critical data is in my database. That's where my crown jewels are. Well, my hypothesis is that somebody, I don't know, let's say a system administrator, for example. I think some of my system admins are logging onto my database, they're dumping all that data, and they're exfiltrating it through whatever, USB sticks or Dropbox or something like that. Again, you walk the process again. Tools and techniques. Okay, go look at your database logs. Are you seeing some dumps happening? Where are they coming from? Or what time are they happening? Do you see any network activity following that? See, now we pivot to network. Endpoint activity. Do we see any endpoints being logged on at whatever time this stuff is happening? A lot of activity on endpoints. Do we see any proxy traffic happening at those times? So by the time you analyze all those different logs and things, you may uncover the pattern being people download to the desktop, encrypt it, zip it, something, push it out again, USB sticks or proxies or something. Very simple case, but again, it shows you how, with just a simple hypothesis, you can walk through that. Once you identify that, you would just run through the analytics portion, and you can look for the same activity in other computers, and that could help paint a good picture of what is going on, right? The other question that I get, I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't understand this hunch thing. I am not creative. I don't know what's going on. Well, MITRE is going to be the solution for that. If I could see a show of hands who's familiar with the MITRE attack framework. Oh, this gets me excited. When I started doing this talk, I would mention MITRE, and everybody would be like, what is MITRE? So for those of you, I'm excited to see that a lot of people are aware. Hopefully you're leveraging the MITRE, the work that MITRE is doing with the attack framework, because this is part of how we're going to, kind of try to get ahead. Adversarial tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. Framework for cyber adversary behavior. The work that MITRE did was they analyzed a whole bunch of intrusions and attacks out there, and they said, let's find what's common here. What kind of behaviors are we seeing in those attacks where there's a lot of information published on how they were done, okay? As you can see at the bottom here, we have the kill chain. The work that MITRE is doing is concentrated on the last steps of the kill chain, because all they care is for people that made it through our defenses. They don't care about all the initial, recon and all that stuff. They want to solve the problem of, we have people inside. How are we going to detect and fix this issue? Okay. Fantastic starting point for the people who say, I don't know how I'm going to attack this problem. What MITRE did again, they categorized in a matrix the techniques that they saw that the bad actors were using. Maybe a little bit small for the people on the back, but you can go to MITRE's website and see this in more detail. So what they did here It said, well, these are the things that we're observing: initial access, execution, and so forth and so on, lateral movement, exfiltration. We're seeing some commonalities in the things that are happening out there. For example, let's take lateral movement. They said, what have we observed in those attacks from a technique perspective? Well, we saw people using Apple Script, application deployment software. We saw people using logon scripts, okay? What about how they exfiltrate data? Well, we saw a lot of automated exfiltration, compression, encryption, doing rate limiting, slow and constant, exfiltration over some other protocols. So now we have something that we can use to base our investigation into what might be happening. We can start looking for all this stuff right here. We can build it into the process. And again, look for the unknown, okay? We may not have an alert, but we can start doing, for example, if we take the data transfer size limit, we can start looking to our proxy logs or something like that to see the outgoing traffic. We do some analysis and we can do some nice visualizations and kind of come to an understanding of where there might be some anomalies, okay? As you can see, a lot of these things live in different areas. We're talking about DLLs here. We're talking about proxy stuff. You're going to have to find out a lot of information about your network that you may or may not have. So please do keep that in mind. It's going to be a lot of a learning experience. I was listening to the talk the other day on zero trust. This is kind of similar to zero trust. You cannot implement threat hunting or zero trust models overnight. It's something that takes a little bit of investigation, understanding your networks, your systems, and yeah, just learning and adapting to the things that you're going to be seeing out there on your networks. The automation, we said it's sure we cannot fully automate, but one of our goals is going to be not doing the same hunts twice, okay? You do your hunt, you follow your loop, and the result of that could be automated because it becomes a detection, an automated detection. That use case is proven. You move on to the next thing, send that over to your incident response people, and that's it. You try another approach, some other technique, some other hunch. Maybe you have some threat intelligence suggesting that there's something else going on. So that is what you do. Never do the same hunts twice. So that's basically a 10,000 feet overview into the process. From there, we move on to talk about the people. Remember, people, process, and technology. And this is super important. I like to say, you know, that the three legs of the tripod are important, but I would say people plays a big, big role. When I said threat hunting, some people think of somebody, if you've seen the Mission Impossible movies, so somebody like Ethan Hunt, somebody who has the gadgets, the sticky gloves. He can come from the ceiling and do the thing where he doesn't trip the pressure sensors down there on the vault. But that's not really who we need. We don't need somebody with all the gadgets and anything like that. We need somebody more like Brian Mills from the movie Taken. Somebody with a particular set of skills that they have acquired over a long career. If you put a new guy to do threat hunting, and I'm saying a new guy to security, that might be difficult, okay? You need somebody who understands some things that we're gonna see right now. Threat hunter needs to know cybersecurity. That's kind of a given, but I have to discuss it because some people, I've seen cases where people pull employees from, I don't know, help desk, telecommunications, and they bring them into security. They don't give them the right training. They expect them to do things like threat hunting that are, you know, kind of advanced. So you're just setting people up for failure if you're doing that, right? You need somebody who at least understands cyber, somebody who understands the threat landscape. What is it that's going on out there? What's new and hot? The latest trends in ransomware or attacks or all of that stuff. Somebody who can keep tabs on what the bad guys are doing. Threat intel knowledge comes in super handy. You want them to have a wide skill set. If you have a guy who's an expert, let's pick something, Cisco. He's a networking guru, CCIE. He wrote the book on this and that. Uh, sure, he's going to bring some value from a threat hunting team from a network perspective. But what about if he does not understand other things, forensics or something like that? That's going to be somewhat limited. So ideally, somebody doesn't have to be an expert in everything, but a wider skill set may bring more value than somebody who's an expert in one thing. If you have somebody who can read or code, read or write code, that's always a plus. This is something that I see out there in the wild. Also, people who lack those skills. So if there's some sort of obfuscation or something, they may miss that. So that's a big plus. Soft skills have been one of the recurring themes I've heard in other talks. You want to, these people need to be able to communicate what they're seeing. A lot of this stuff is highly advanced, highly technical. People need to be able to abstract that, to send it up the chain of command, and make it actionable for them. As security professionals, part of our job is to translate this stuff into risk. How does the business, how does this translate for the business from a risk perspective? So you need to have somebody who can help you do that. And then last but not least, team. Sure, it's hard because we cannot dedicate a whole bunch of people to threat hunting if we're trying to do something new, but maybe start thinking about the concept of a hunting team. Like I said, nobody knows everything. Even if you have a wide skill set, you might need uh, an expert or two in some things that are particularly important to your business. So make sure you're thinking longer term the concept of a team, hunting team, instead of just one person. What is it that makes a great threat hunter? It's a fantastic question that I always try to present it in 4 dimensions. Okay, on the left, curiosity. You want somebody who asks questions like, "What is this? What's going on here? I want to know more. I want to go down that rabbit hole. I want to understand why that activity is happening, what's going on, and what is this thing that I'm seeing here." People need to be patient also. This is going to take some time. As much as I want to make sure that we move fast, some of these things, they require, the precision of a surgeon to carve through logs and things like that. On the second dimension, critical thinking, super important. Somebody who likes to solve problems. We wanted somebody first who wants to ask questions, but then now we need somebody who is going to ask the right questions. Okay? If we're seeing a lot of data going out on the internet from our systems, somebody may raise an alarm. It's like, oh my God, exfiltration. Well, you know what? Critical thinking, the guy is going to say, hold on, it's the 30th of the month. We're doing end of month processing. Uh, that might be a batch job or something like that. So they should be asking the right questions. We need somebody also who's open-minded, considering alternatives. I hate confirmation bias. A lot of people seek out to prove what they think it's going on. That is never a good idea. Always consider that there might be something else, okay? It could be a nation state breaking in, or it could be your finance people doing end of month processing. So keep that in mind. Also, people that think like attackers. This is super important. Kind of ties back to being kind of in touch with what's going on out there, what's hot in the security news and things like that. You need somebody who can understand what's happening on the threat landscape and go ahead and try to penetrate your systems or steal data or whatever like the bad guys would. Third dimension, tech expertise. Like I said, you cannot expect people to come from a tangentially related field to come and do your threat hunting. Sure, the telecom guys may know a few things about IT, but they might not be the best resource unless you provide them training and you grow them. We're going to talk about that in a slide or two. Ideally, you want somebody who understands the systems that you have. Infrastructure. If you're on premise, sure, people who understand how everything on-prem works. If you are a cloud-centric company, somebody who understands the flow of data in the cloud and how all those systems produce logs and all the stuff that they do. Somebody who understands your apps, forensics, who can do data analysis. maybe a little bit of reverse engineer. All of these things are important things that are going to help you, build that team of threat hunters. Final dimension, and for some reason, a lot of people fail at this last one. Uh, I don't know if you can read that, but 2 plus 2 equals 4. It does not equal a banana or something else. Some people just cannot make connections, okay? They are seeing data in front of them and they struggle to answer some questions, maybe because they lack the business context. They don't know what's going on in their business. This is not solely a technical operation. You have to understand the context where your data moves, where your systems operate. This is going to be critical. Also for connecting the dots, finding patterns. This is going to be something super important. Correlating data. Like I said, business process happening, data moving. Some people sometimes cannot see that connection. You need somebody who's going to help you paint a picture. That is the kind of the end goal here. So again, some ideas to get you going. You may have this talent internally. Something else that I want to mention, you could have an ad hoc threat hunting team. Maybe if you don't have the resources, maybe you dedicate half of somebody's time to doing something like this, a quarter, whatever helps, when you're starting out. That's going to help you kind of prove your idea and potentially get some resources later on. So from people, we move to the last piece of the puzzle, which is the technology, we need the tools. We absolutely need them. And tools are cool, but they can make you a fool. There's no one definitive threat hunting tool. I keep saying that because I see it out there in the wild, people claiming they have the definitive solution for threat hunting. And the real thing is that every single company out there where you work is different. You're not going to have the same tools, the same logs, everything. So you need to figure out what works for you. Understand what you have right now, okay? You want to leverage whatever you can. Like I said, if you need Active Directory logs, you think that's going to bring some value. If you identify that as a gap, go pursue that. If you need database, endpoint, network visibility, you're going to work through identifying whatever gaps you have and leverage what you can. If all you can do is just centralize your logs with Windows native tools or whatever you have in-house, start with that. That's going to allow you to understand more of your data, one, and second, where you need to go from there, what kind of tools you would need to get to that next level. Start by doing something small, see what works. I would say don't run and buy things. So people want to sell you things, but it's a matter of due diligence. You need to be able to understand what do you have, what are you missing, and then move from there on. Remember that as hunting matures, the tools will do the same thing. Threat intelligence tools are going to be super important, okay? You can start with free solutions. There's a whole bunch of out there. We have the Alien Vault product here. This is something that you can set up for free. You don't have to spend $1. Find somewhere to run things maybe. That's going to give you an idea, start getting your feet wet if this is new to you. If you subscribe to some commercial threat intelligence things like Anomaly or Recorded Future, these solutions are very, very expensive, but they're highly curated and they definitely bring a lot of value through your threat hunting operation because you're going to be getting a lot of fresh data for threats. Things get aged, so you're going to see a difference between a paid solution and a free solution. But again, the key here is that you start somewhere. You could start with something free, and then as you identify that your needs are a little bit different, you can migrate to something that is a paid product. From a network monitoring perspective, to this day, I don't understand why there's still a lot of people who don't have this kind of visibility into their networks. You want to understand how data is moving in your network. Security Onion at the bottom there, it's a free product. Again, I always try to present something that is free that can get your feet wet. You can start deploying this in your network. Again, it doesn't happen overnight, but you can start playing with it, no cost. Of course, the only cost is going to be the time of the people who are going to be doing this. But it has the Bro, that was used to be called Bro, now it's called Zeek network product, which Corelight is the commercial implementation. So again, you see the path. You start with something free. Later on, you can that knowledge that you gain, you can move on to a paid product that is the same thing. That's going to allow you to see those conversations that those devices are having on the network. This is going to analyze a lot of traffic. If there's uh, you know, clear text passwords, you can see it with that. You can analyze SMB traffic. You can see a whole bunch of stuff. Um, Understand what devices are doing on your network, east-west traffic. That is essential, especially if you're looking at lateral movement. If you do not have any kind of segmentation, this becomes even more important because you need to understand those data flows on your network um, in some good detail. Endpoint triage, this is going to be super, super important because a lot of attacks nowadays, people are not trying to breach our firewalls. They're going for phishing and they're sending garbage to our people, hoping they would click. And this is a massive, massive vector for getting into our networks. Tools like the Google Rapid Response framework. Nowadays, we have Velociraptor, which is kind of a similar tool. Again, also free. It's another tool that I forgot to include here, CAPE. It's fairly new, but all these tools are going to allow you to do some sort of remote live forensics. In the past, we would do forensics by grabbing whole images of computers and things like that. Tools like these, they do two things. One, you can capture memory, registry, and things like that really, really quick. You can target them, say, hey, go find, tell me if this registry key exists in this computer. The beauty of these systems, again, they're free. You can kind of set your own hunt. You can say, okay, show me how many computers have this registry entry, and they have this DLL in this location, and they also have these other couple of characteristics. So you kind of set up your hunt in the tool, and then you let it run against your systems, and you do it only once. The system talks to your endpoints, grabs all that information, it's going to bring it back, centrally store the results, and then you can know if you're talking about one computer being compromised or you're talking about 1,000 computers being compromised. So these kind of tools, super important. From here, the logical migration is going to be towards something like an endpoint detection and response, commercial offering, or something like that. But again, something to start uh, getting the idea. You need all that data centralized somewhere, okay? You need to visualize, correlate, find those anomalies. You're going to do that with some tools. Elk Stack, Splunk, Graylog, just to mention a couple, right? All of these have free versions, again, just so you can get your feet wet. If you need commercial support, you can get all of that. You can, get commercial offerings, but something to start playing with. So the point is that I have no resources or no money is no longer a valid excuse. You just need time from your people so they can start deploying some of these tools. And think about all the things you're going to throw in your centralized repository. You want to get Windows logs. Again, targeted collections that it's not every single log because that's a lot of data. Things like Sysmon that it's going to let you know what processes are running on your computers. It's going to hash processes and things like that, and you can get a lot of information out of that. Antivirus, EDR logs, all of that stuff needs to be brought into your centralized collection. Network things. If you do not have something like Zeek or Security Onion or things like that, start with NetFlow. Those routers and switches, those conversations are going to bring a lot of value. Think about things like DNS, DHCP, proxy, firewall. Anything that talks on the network could bring some value. Think about other less normal sources, if you will. Email logs, DLP, vulnerability management tools, your Qualys, your Tenable, whatever it is that you have, it's going to help you fill some gap. Active Directory, database logs, apps, and things like that. It's a lot of information, but hopefully you're getting the idea that you can start by doing something, even if it's small. So what is it that you're going to do when you go back to the office? Think about first establishing some sort of vision. Like, what is it that I want to do? Where do we want to take this? Who are the people? Do I have anybody in-house who might be interested in helping out with this? What resources do we need? Is this the right time? If your business is heavy now, closing the year, not the right time, please. Do it in Q1 or Q2 or something else in 2020. So you will be setting yourself for failure if you go back to your office and you try to do this stuff when the time is not right. You may need to socialize that concept. A lot of people don't understand what this is. Uh, we have to sell it to the executives. You got to sell it up. You got to sell it down. If you're a people leader, think about that. Your peers, you need to get that buzz going so people get excited. You might have a lot of talent in-house, people from other departments that might be interested in helping out with this. And there's nothing better than growing people, in my opinion. Okay? Identify who's with you, who's not. Those who are not with you might be your biggest obstacles, to consider that. At the end of the day, you want to get buying for this little threat hunting project so people can see the value. That's going to help you accelerate adoption. Remember, it's going to take time, so the more work you can do up front, the better. Also remember that we're looking to form a team. We don't want the sole guy in the basement who's going to do all this stuff. Like I said, identify talent. Who from security or some other departments might be able to help. Think about developing your people. It's really expensive if you want to hire an experienced threat hunter. And they usually want to work for bigger environments where they can, contribute to mature operations. So developing cross-training, that's going to be a big, big thing if you're a smaller shop. Think about that. You want to fill those knowledge gaps. You want to grow your people. And last but not least, remember, all of those superheroes there in the picture, they have some flaws, but if I find all of them coming at me down the street, oh my, I'm in trouble, because the sum of its parts, you just cannot defeat that. That's why having a threat hunting team is going to be so important. You're going to have select people that have expertise in different things, and when you just combine them together, it's just going to be a fantastic and beautiful thing. Hit the ground running. And what I mean by this is do something. Remember that we said the timing might not be right. So maybe what you want to do is start writing down some ideas. Put out your notebook if you're old school. If you have OneNote, Evernote, whatever you use, start writing some things down so you can start thinking about how you're going to attack this problem. Start doing something small. It doesn't matter how small it is. Maybe tackle the low-hanging fruit, involve your team, gather their input. Don't think because you're bringing this idea, it has to be yours. Other people may understand something about this, so make sure you're gathering their input, inclusivity, and all of that. Document some of the stuff, because you don't want to you're going to make some mistakes in the path. You want to make sure you don't make them again. There's going to be some lessons learned. You want to make sure you have that accessible. From there, you define how you move forward. Picture here kind of summarizes my thought. Think big, because this could be a fantastic thing. Start small, but most of all, just start. Do something, because otherwise, you will never get off the ground. All right. Chris is looking at me weird, so I'm going to speed it up. So let's recap here quickly. What is it that we talked about so we can get into some Q&A? Incident response and forensics are reactive. They work, but too late. We need some new approach. Threat hunting is going to help us bridge that gap in becoming a more proactive defensive operation. We need to leverage people, process, and technology. That tripod is important. Remember that we cannot fully automate, okay? It's going to have a place, but it's not fully automated. Those tools to visualize things and find outliers, anomalies, and things like that will be invaluable, okay? Have a vision, socialize that vision, help people understand your vision, and don't forget about the team. That should be with capital T-E-A-M, okay? And again, start small, but start. The idea is flipping that massive switch from the reactive side to the proactive side. So with that, I will take any questions that you guys may have. Thank you very much.